Every year, we like to do a review of Pokemon sprites from a main series game, but after covering red and blue and Japanese green and yellow and gold, silver, crystal, ruby, sapphire, emerald, fire red, leaf green, diamond, pearl, platinum, heart gold, soul silver, black and white, we have run out of main series games that use sprites. So we thought, what's next? Maybe the 3D models of Generation 6? While those are nice, we thought it would be better to go back to when Pokemon first implemented 3D models into a main series adjacent game, Pokémon Stadium. This was our first time seeing the video game Pokemon in motion outside of Snap and Pinball, and since this game came out in the first generation, it had a lot of quirks to the models, with Game Freak not being as settled on the Pokemon designs compared to later games. And for the record, HAL Laboratories developed Pokémon Stadium, but Game Freak made the designs in the main series games. So we want to look back at some of the weirdest models that Pokémon Stadium brought us for the original 151. This will include all their animations, how they idle, and simply how they look with those fresh N64 graphics. We'll just be covering the first international Pokémon Stadium game and not the sequel for this video, but we'll probably look at the sequel at some point in the future. And joining me in this video is my co-host and Pokemaniac, Judgment Meter.
I had this game. I played it, but I didn't know anyone else who had this game, so I played it by myself in my living room. It was sad, but at least I had a game. The only game I had was the Pokemon.
Now, let's analyze the top 10 weirdest Pokemon Stadium models. Number 10, Alakazam. With weird on this list, sometimes it's just a Pokemon that does something that seems out of character, and Alakazam's getting up animation was always highly entertaining, but not what I was expecting from them. Alakazam boasts a very high IQ, and has always been shown as a more serious looking Pokemon. Just looking at his Generation 1 portrayals, he was always business, no fun, or just a kaiju that one time. So when I saw his somewhat comedic getting up animation, I was surprised but happy. Look at that arrogance, this dude's just chilling when he gets up.
Reclining for days.
The funny thing is, Alakazam takes so long to fall down after getting hit that the full animation never finishes for me. He's supposed to float back up after reclining and then go into a standing position, but since the end gets cut off, it just looks like he falls down like Slayer in Guilty Gear and it ends with him reclining, which is still a flex. It shows that he's not really hurt from your attack, he's just bored. As strange as this non-serious animation was when it first came out, it's nothing too shocking overall, since Alakazam got to relax a bit in later years, like the time he played ping pong with his spoons in the anime, so I just love the swag of this recovery pose. I also like how he bends his spoons when he unleashes a powerful attack. I've always viewed him bending a spoon as its final action before he discards it, so it's nice to see that he can put them back to normal after an attack. And shoutouts to his pre-evolution Kadabra, who throws his spoon when he faints. It's funny how he's so frustrated with his loss that he's willing to toss out his trusty spoon that he always carries.
And then he hits himself in his head. So sad.
Number 9, Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff. These ones are here mostly for their fainting animations. Everything else about them is pretty standard. Jigglypuff goes with its namesake and puffs in and out when doing its actions, though I do like when it gets hit, it rolls back like a ball. That animation reminds me of when Jigglypuff fought the extraterrestrial Clefairy in the anime and it kept on getting knocked back. Not sure if that's a reference or if they just had the same idea. And for Wigglytuff, there is some wiggling, and it sure is tough and bouncy. Wigglytuff has always had those bunny-like ears, and its idle stance in this game is the most bunny it's ever been, continuously hopping up and down and wiggling its ears.
Wigglytuff! It's so cute, I love it, it's a bunny. I love it, love it, love it, love it. Ugh, I just want to hug it.
Besides tapping into its rabbit persona in Pokémon Stadium, Wigglytuff also retains its original color pattern. The main pattern was a white circle that went from its feet to right below its mouth in Generation 1 and 2, and then it was changed to going right above its mouth in Generation 3 onwards. But the very first Wigglytuff design had it as a paler pink for most of its body, with the white circle sort of faded into its stomach like a subtle patch of fur. The Stadium model went with this original coloration to a point where you almost can't see the white in the middle. As for the fainting animations, they go the opposite ways for each Pokemon. When Jigglypuff faints, they completely deflate, and not just like a balloon flying around as air comes out of it. Jigglypuff immediately flattens where it's entirely 2D. I know it's a balloon, but this is like reality warping. It's like it got crushed in a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Why? Why did it do that?
Wigglytuff, on the other hand, doesn't deflate, but rather gets very stiff when it faints, falling forward and bouncing as if it just got filled with rubber. I like the dichotomy shown in how this evolutionary line loses a battle. Oh hey, we got Wigglytuff here live in studio. How you doing? Oh yeah, and how do you like being on this weird animation list? No, weird is not a bad thing, it's just... I know what you think, but I'm trying... You got any other Wigglytuff voices in ya? Thank you. Number 8, Venusaur. Venusaur looks pretty good. The model moves like how I'd expect a giant dinosaur frog thing with a tree on its back to move. However, there's one aspect to its model that's always confused me. Whenever it does anything major, its eyes get all bloodshot, like they turn all red and pink. I have no idea why they do this. The pupils are normally red, but not to that extent, and no lore states why this would happen. They go bloodshot when it's hit, when it faints, and whenever it does a damaging attack. I guess when they're under extreme pressure, the blood pumps throughout their body at a rapid pace and goes right to the eyes. Perhaps it's even stress.
Poor baby.
It's fine. They're probably used to it at this point since it happens so often. Or maybe the eyes are just bloodshot because they enjoy smoking the old razor leaf, if you know what I mean. Yes, you know what I mean. It's weed. The joke is weed. It's the easy joke everyone's been making about anything grass related in Pokemon since the 90s.
I guess he's a stage 3 Pokemon, so he's old enough.
Number 7, Meowth. Why is it so angry? I like the complete 180 of Meowth going from happy idling, bouncing around like a bipedal cat should, to vicious and flailing as soon as it gets an attack order. Not only that, but if it gets hit, he gets pissed for a second. He's doing a why I oughta face before going back to happy cat idle. Though it has the in-between face where its eyes are closed and it's like, did that dude just hit me?
He looks like Garfield.
Does that mean it was predicting a lowland Persian? My guess is, because anime Meowth was a sassy little dude, they gave the generic old Meowth in Stadium the same type of personality in its body language, and I like it. Or maybe Meowths are just more angry in 3D. Number 6, Ninetales. Ninetales has a very commanding pose. This feels like a Pokemon I don't want to mess with. Each one of its tails moves individually, like it's showing off that the power is flowing through every part of its body.
Get mad. And it like brays like a horse. It's more of a horse than Ponyta.
The separate tails are very cool to see, considering that in most media, its tails all just kind of move as a single unit, and not only can it move the tails individually in Stadium, but it shows its precision by raising and lowering each tail one at a time for its idle pose.
I'm gonna flip you off with each tail.
A big reason you get this commanding power from Ninetales' stance is because it's based on the Kitsune, a fox in Japanese folklore that can live for over 1,000 years and can even ascend to spirit form. In other popular media, you can look at Naruto for the main example. There was even an anime episode about a Ninetales creating an illusion of a woman to lure Brock in because he looked like her mansion's owner from hundreds of years ago, showing its long lifespan and supernatural abilities, and then it did a whole bunch of other crazy power stuff to really make that Kitsune comparison. So with Ninetales being based on a legendary beast, it makes sense why it looks like it's constantly about to raise hell in Pokémon Stadium.
She's classy enough to do it all. Even dig a hole. You go, girl. You dig that hole.
Number 5, Kangaskhan. Whoa, Kangaskhan, chill out there. You have a baby in your pouch that is both fragile and can fall out easily. I love how hard Kangaskhan goes with its dynamic animations. When it attacks, I used to think it was moving so intensely that the baby fell out of its pouch and then was getting frivolously tossed around by physics, where it coincidentally landed on the mom's head at the end. But later on, I noticed the baby was actually climbing on the mother's head willingly, as if it's like, oh, mom's fighting again, I know the drill, climb on the head for safety, which is still pretty irresponsible on the mother's part. Though in one of its attack animations, the baby definitely falls out.
No!
That's just sad.
This mother should have removed the baby from the pouch before fighting. I get that she wants it to gain fighting knowledge by watching her up front, but I feel it could have gotten the same wisdom from the sideline. Then when she faints, she does this overly dramatic fall like she's dying in theater. It looks like it's almost sped up, as if she wanted to get every motion of her falling down animation in there, but knows that she only has 5 seconds to do so. However, as she falls down, the baby pops out of the pouch and falls out of the mother's reach, forced to suffer for the mother's loss too. See, this is why you put your baby off to the side before you battle. We don't have Mega Kangaskhan yet. Not saying Kangaskhan's a bad mother, but won't she please think of the children? Number 4, Magneton. What I find interesting about this Magneton model is they were going by how its lore was stated in the Pokédex. We've always heard that 3 Magnemite come together to form a singular being called Magneton. Where do the other 2 Magnemite come from when one wants to evolve? What happens if the other 2 Magnemite belong to other trainers? Do they all have to be the same level to link up, like you have to be around the same height to fuse in Dragon Ball? None of these are ever explained, but at least we know that their brains sync up to become one, so that's neat. If Magnemite evolves in the games, 2 more just spontaneously grow out of the main Magnemite, and when it happens in the anime, it just glows and turns into a Magneton like any other evolution. However, since the concept of 3 Magnemite in a trench coat creating one Pokemon was always referenced, Stadium made it a reality, but in a way we never see. Instead of being stuck together, they were just 3 Magnemite floating around each other. They would get together in their more well-known formation at times, but when idling around, they were doing their own thing. What I like about this concept is the Magnemite only get in their stuck-together formation when doing attacks. It's like the developers expand upon Magneton's lore to essentially show us that the Magnemite come together in the heat of battle. When they need to gather all their power for their strongest electric attacks or just oppose, they get as close as possible. What makes this even better though is they don't only pose that way. When doing certain attacks, they'll line up single file, showing that some powers require a different frequency or something like that. It's like they have different battle formations for attacks depending on how much electricity is being used, and if they faint, we learn that they're apparently only magnetic when conscious.
It just totally breaks.
Overall, it's a cool take on these magnetic dudes that still makes me wonder where the other 2 Magnemite come from. I also just noticed that the bottom 2 Magnemite only have 1 lower screw instead of 2 like the top Magnemite. There's a lot more detail put into this model than I expected. Number 3, Gloom and Vileplume. Gloom was always a sleepy little guy. Their eyes are always closed, they're drooling, they're just trying to get through the day as quick as they can. But sometimes early Gloom artwork would show us that its eyes could be open. But they're not just open to see a little, they open them as wide as possible beyond human comprehension. It's a total 180 from its default face. I don't see this face used in modern Gloom media, so this concept was likely dropped, but because it was there in Generation 1, Pokémon Stadium used it a lot. I'm not sure if they were told that Gloom opens its eyes when something big happens, or if they just liked this part of the model, but Gloom would open its eyes during anything major, when it was sent out, when it was hit hard, during big attacks, and of course when it fainted. It feels like Gloom had its eyes open more than they were shut.
Oh my goodness! It's like it got electric shocked, or it smells something really bad.
Actually, it resists electricity, and it naturally releases a stench, so I don't think either of those would affect it, unless it doesn't normally notice its own scent.
This scent is me.
I just smelled myself and I smell terrible.
And while it's not as jarring as Gloom, its evolution Vileplume has one aspect to its model I want to point out. Normally, it's on model, its Rafflesia head jiggles about, and it gets X's in its eyes when it's hit. Pretty expected. However, when Vileplume faints, part of it just vanishes. I can't tell if its body just retreats into its flower head, or if the flower's power becomes too strong and overtakes the rest of its body when its energy is depleted, despite how much Vileplume struggles. The best part is, right before it goes back into its Pokeball, part of the flower twitches, which I like to think is Vileplume struggling to get out from underneath just before the flower takes over its mind.
It twitches? This is your brain on Vileplume. This is so sad.
Maybe they're okay? What are your opinions on the matter of Vileplume?
Vileplume.
Number 2, Poliwrath. Poliwrath's model is full of so much personality. This might be the best idle pose in the game. The dude won't stop flexing. He trained every day to attain his strength, and he's gonna show it off every second that he's out of his Pokeball.
I mean, if I was super buff, that's probably what I would do too. You know, just flex all the time.
If he attacks, he'll go into a ready for battle position for the attack, but as soon as it's over, he immediately goes back to flexing. There's no time for a break. If he does a non-damaging move, he just flexes harder to do it, and then goes back to regular flexing. And whenever he gets hit, he almost loses balance, but then gets right back into place to continue flexing on the opponent, no matter how much they hurt him.
The muscles and chest hair protect him.
I actually think those are supposed to be his innards, not chest hair.
He wants you to see it from the back seats.
Even when he feints, it looks like he's attempting to maintain the flexing up until his last moment. The never-ending flexing was mainly weird to me since I never really viewed Poliwrath as the braggadocious type. He always seemed like he was serious in all his artwork and anime appearances, like he'd prefer to show off his strength by fighting rather than posing. Like I could imagine the Machop line doing something like this, or even the more happy-go-lucky Politoed, though Poliwrath flexing is definitely not a bad thing. I'm always on board with letting the Poliwrath line have a little more fun. There's a reason I'm wearing a Poliwhirl mask in my Twitter profile picture. For number 1, we went with an old classic, a Pokemon that looked downright horrifying in its original iterations. It's got the tongue of terror. Number 1, Golbat. Going with its original Japanese and international sprites in green, red, and blue version, Golbat is portrayed as more monstrous compared to modern iterations. Modern Golbat seems pretty neutral, just floating there with its mouth agape, and it has no murderous vibes going on. It could be your friend, your enemy, or just leave you alone. It's all up to what you do to it next. But those original sprites, especially the red and blue one, were scary. The wings looked like they could grab you, the tongue was out like never before, and it was giant, so this mindset was taken into its Pokémon Stadium model. Similar to the old sprites, it was shown standing rather than flying, but instead of having its wings out, it's hugging itself, swaying back and forth, which feels unsettling. What's it hiding from us? Why is it moving so aggressively, stepping forward and back?
Is he crying? Looks like he's crying. Poor boy.
No, it's menacing! Fear it!
He's trying to cover up his tears. Show your emotions.
Like, I get that it's covering its body like a bat when they hang upside down, but it's standing upwards, so it's kinda creepy. It looks more like Dracula now. Then whenever it attacks, it unveils what it was hiding, which is a huge-ass tongue. Anytime it flaps its wings to attack, that tongue goes flying everywhere as its mouth never closes. I have no idea why this was a part of early Golbat design philosophy, but this model is the most detailed its open mouth has ever gotten, and probably the biggest it's ever looked.
It is quite large. It could just eat you. It's like a snake where it can unhinge its jaw and just swallow you whole.
Huh, what's it like in there?
It's, a black hole.
Besides having a large mouth, Golbat itself is just large with this model. This is probably the height scale it's always been at, but it really puts it into perspective in this game. Not only do you have this bat that can't keep its tongue together, but it's close to your size, yet it's still trying to appear mild-mannered by hiding its true form behind those wings.
Yeah, it's trying to lull you into a false sense of security, and then it will strike.
But I thought you sympathized with it because it looked sad.
It has achieved its goal. Problem solved.
Aha, so now you're on my side that this model is a bit frightening.
Yeah, but the huge smile is... I can't really take him seriously with his face.
I guess the fact that it can't close its mouth does make it look like it has a permanent smile. It's like how Baraka from Mortal Kombat always looks kinda happy. So for having the tongue of doom, the smile of sadness, and the wings of concealing, Golbat's model is both weird and intriguing enough to get the top spot on this list.
And there goes the battle!
Now, what did you think? Did all these models show you a side of classic Pokemon that you forgot about? Were there any models from the first Pokémon Stadium that were weirder than these ones? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.